ask our guest what his option is about Project High Volt, and could that be some of the cause of the sun looking different? Do you know about Project High Volt?
I have to say I acquiesce. I've never heard of that particular sponsored program. I'm sorry.
Neither have I, to be honest with you. I get listeners come at me with all kinds of stuff, and it's like I'm finding out that there's a lot of stuff I don't know. But yeah, so folks, if you've got questions, you can call in. Apparently it's working, 803-392-4566. You can also give your questions in the chat room. Let's see. Project High Volt was an experiment to get rid of the lower belt of the Van Allen radiation belt. For your information, if it's asked. So that's what it was. But no, I didn't hear about it.
I haven't either. We could talk about real quickly, if I may. I can move on here.
Sure.
And I took some judicious notes these past 2 weeks that I want to run by you. And this is more evidence, if you will, of the Nibiru system being literally in our inner solar system now. And there's another gentleman called the Higher Truth Channel. Again, the Higher Truth Channel. And it's a gentleman who is a very inquisitive guy, very intelligent guy. I believe he's in the healthcare industry. In fact, he may be a medical doctor, or maybe he's a registered nurse. He talks about this. But what he really does at the Higher Truth Channel on YouTube is he really goes in depth in breaking down all of the various minutia related to charts and graphs. And very specifically, what he points out is that in interstellar space, it's 74% hydrogen, 25% helium, and approximately 2% or a little bit less other trace elements in the multiverse within interstellar space. My point is that what's directly associated with a brown dwarf star specifically is the off-gassing primarily of helium-4 to a lesser degree helium-3. Helium-3, for example, is found on the backside of the moon. You can vacuum it up almost. They use a vacuuming process. We can go deep on the data here. The Zeta Reptilians, along with the U.S. Air Force, have had a joint base on the backside of the moon since the late 60s. I was told this by military sources. My point is that the helium-3 is not that it's very rare in the Earth. In fact, the Russians discovered it doing some deep drilling. They found some 60,000 feet down last year sometime. It was the first time ever that they discovered helium-3. But my point is this, is that let's go through the data here real quick. And basically what this helium is doing is it's increasing not twofold, but threefold the amount of gamma ray radiation that's currently hitting the Earth. We now have gamma ray winds that normally should be about 300,000 miles per second. They're double that now. They're upwards of 700,000 miles per second. And again, the Higher Truth Channel, this gentleman breaks down these charts very well. These are vetted charts from NASA, from the European Space Agency. And if you really want to get deep into the data, go look at these charts. They're very eye-opening. And also, again, R. Wayne Steiger, this PhD theoretical physicist, talks about directly the interaction of helium-3 and helium-4 and how it's impacting our Earth. What it's doing at the moment, and this is another reason why we're having very, very fast-changing weather, is because it's compressing the heliosphere, which normally should be, from the data that I've discerned, at about 90,000 miles. It's been compressed down to 25,000 miles. The helium-3 and the helium-4 are doing this to our heliosphere. But what's interesting, it's not coming from the same direction as the sun. It's coming from the backside. And when you look at what is it, Tom? Come on. It's the helioscope that NASA puts out. You see these waves coming in of this helium, it's called a helium cone, coming in from the backside of the planet opposite the sun. What would do that? Well, first of all, our sun is primarily a hydrogen-burning, not helium-burning sun. Therefore, if we have primarily a large amount of this helium, which comprises 24% of interstellar space, and it's coming in from the backside towards the Earth, it's coming from some other source. What is that source? There again, it's the two brown dwarf stars that are behind us coming in on a synchronous orbit.
Two brown dwarf stars. So there'll be...
Yes.
And I would have to assume that each of those stars have their own systems? They got to have a lot of junk.
One's called Nemesis. The other is called Woodworm. And let me get this straight. And Nibiru is where the Anunnaki live. We know this. This is also what I want to say regarding this system. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to believe this, but this is my theory. I believe personally, and John Teeter too talks about this. He talks specifically, and I know that he's the real deal because he mentions certain information regarding the TR-3B, the Lockheed Martin anti-gravity self-cloaking invisible flying triangle, okay, that he was operating up through the year 2040. And specifically, he talked about how that was a modularized built unit, and that is 100% true. And when he said that particular fact, that's what rang a bell in my mind that he was speaking the truth. But what he also describes is how we have supposedly an embassy, okay, on the planet of Nibiru, and on that planet we interact with the Anunnaki, and as we all know, half of our DNA is Anunnaki DNA. I believe this. Again, what Michael Tellinger talked about, what Alfred Lambert-Weber talked about going back 237,000 years ago, where basically they took some red ones, some yellow ones, some pink ones, and some black ones, color-coded, if you will, and, shunt the DNA from 12 strands of DNA down to 2 strands of DNA. And what's also interesting, if I may add this real quickly, I spoke to a medical doctor who was a anesthetist. He did, anesthesiologist. Let me get this straight. I'm sorry, not an anesthetist. That's a nurse anesthetist. He was an anesthesiologist. And we were having a conversation back in 2005, and we were talking about a similar subject matter. And he said to me, "Hey, Tom, if you look through an electron microscope and you look at the base of the telomere in the 2 strands of DNA, you will see a splice mark in both strands." And I'm like, really? Wow. Now, I took his word for this, but subsequent, it leads into what Alfred Lambert-Weber discussed and what Michael Tellinger discussed pertaining to the fact that this DNA has been shunted or clipped, and this is why we have 2 strands of DNA as opposed to previous to this time frame, 238,000 years ago, we had 12 strands of DNA, just to break it down in a simple explanation.
Okay. All right. And we've got more questions here, so I'll get to a couple more of those before we end up hitting our next break. Let's see. Sabrina asked, I'm wondering his opinion on the rise of allergies and asthma recently in adults who never had those problems before.
Again, I would have to default and say that what we've had going on really in its modern day form since 1992 is a full-blown global-wide geoengineering juggernaut project in place. And one could believe that this is also a terraforming project if you want to believe that. And for sure, as of late, I've looked at a couple of YouTube videos where under a microscope, you're seeing they look almost like shards of glass, okay? And they are definitely artificial material on a nano-sized level. Stuff that even if you're wearing a face mask, it doesn't matter. It's going to come through the face mask. They're so small. The simple problem is that all this garbage that all of us are affected with, one could say Morgellons disease in certain people that have weaker immune systems, but that's an older technology. My point is that between the nanobots, between the psychotropic drugs that they're dropping, sodium fluoride, live viruses, absolutely, she's absolutely right. I would attribute most of this to the geoengineering, and I think that it's targeted. They're targeting larger cities, and it's really disgusting because if these people, this is at the very most corrupt part of the government who's running this, because why is it so secret? You know, you and I are paying for all this.
Oh, I know.
Our taxpayer money are supporting this. Go ahead.
Oh, I know, and what goes up must come down, and it has. I've gotten a gentleman by the name of Francis who had he was the scientist in What in the World Are They Spraying, I think was the name of it.
Sure.
And he had sent me back in 2012 all the the analytics to the test that they did with the soil and the plants. And I'll tell you, it was sky high with aluminum and barium and all this stuff. And it wasn't normal. I mean, and here's an environmental scientist who's telling me, no, this isn't, here's what you would expect to find. Here's what we found. I mean, it was outrageous. And he says that if most people took a hair out of their head and did a test, they would find that they have high traces of it within their bodies.
Yeah, well, just like Fukushima, which is another lie that we're living here on the West Coast, and they've completely covered that up. The problem, simply to answer referencing your guest there, is that all of this is bioaccumulating. And remember, really the only way that you can get crap out of your lungs is to take a cup of water, to take a 28% hydrogen food grade hydrogen peroxide, which is pretty toxic, and you want to mix a tablespoon of that into a cup of water in a sprayer. And if you spray that daily in your mouth, it acts like as an acid or an acidic breakdown. It will actually absorb into your lungs, and you'll be spitting out phlegm. And it's the one true homeopathic way to get garbage out of your lungs. If you're a long-time smoker, it will also remove the tar, because you have to remember your lungs they have no way of exiting out the stuff that's in it, so everything bioaccumulates along with what we're discussing here in your bloodstream.
Absolutely. All right, one more here, and then we'll hit the break. Khalid asked, does guests believe Anunnaki travel with this system or any other beings?
Of course. You know, we could dedicate a whole show to the U.S. Naval Secret Space Program. If you listen to Randy Kramer's data, where Michael Salla has written 3 books on the subject matter. If you listen to John Titor too, we're working with basically 4 alien groups. We're working with the Draco reptilians from the Orion star system, which is on the other side of our galaxy. The problem is these are a parasitical, polluted race that basically they eat children. They taste like chicken. They intergalactically take women and use them in the sex trade, and they take them off planet. They harvest loosh. So this is why we have endless war here. Secondly, we have the tall whites, biogenetically engineered by the Draco reptilians. And we also have the tall grays, once again, bioengineered by the Draco reptilians. And then we have the Zeta reptilians from Zeta Reticuli, who are more benevolent and I think feel sorry for us, but there are elements of them that are also maniacal. Here's one for you. If you read the book, this was written 20 plus years ago by Jim Sparks, called The Keepers. Jim Sparks, The Keepers. Go look it up. He's gone completely off the reservation. You can't find this guy, but he breaks down very specifically how he was caught up in a U.S. Air Force MIOP operation with the Zeta Reptilians, who were coming into his room, and he basically said they're completely interdimensional. Now, what does this have to do with the Anunnaki? Well, I know this. From what I discern and the data that I've researched, and also, interestingly, John Titor too says the same identical information, that the Anunnaki don't get along with the reptilians. Basically, everybody hates them. The problem for us is that we've sold out. Eisenhower sold us out in 1953 when he had 3 meetings with these entities at Edwards Air Force Base, and I was told in 1999 we really didn't have a choice, because had we not signed that deal with Eisenhower, they were gonna just excise the planet and kill all the sentient beings here in the mid-50s and reboot the planet.
Well, kind of like we do with some of these little third world countries, you know, go and bully and say you're going to do it this way or that way, and if not, we're going to wipe you out, right?
Exactly. Well, it's the same thing. But you know what? We're on the wrong team today, my friend.
I know.
It is like Star Trek as an analogy, but we're not Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. That's illogical. Now we're on the other side. We're working with basically the Klingons, where they're going out, rape, pillaging, and murder other three-dimensional, third-dimensional planets, basically to get resources. And our best and brightest Academy grads who are signing up for this are going in one of their 12 Starfleet ships side by side. Michael Sal talks about this in 3 of his books, where we're going out and helping the Draco reptilians overthrow other planets. So this planet is used as a base of operation, and we've sold out to a group of aliens that are 83 million years ahead of us on the timeline in terms of technology. Well, 83 million years.
What gets me is that they have been able to keep everybody, all this stuff going on around us, and it's like just a wonderful sunny day. You go outside and you don't see any of this stuff. If I was an ET race, and I was, I was the one who was being attacked, I would try to do something to show the people here, hey, we exist, we're here, but I don't know, something doesn't let them, I guess.
No. This is the fundamental problem is this: the sheeple are too stupid. Okay, the vast majority of benevolent beings that do come here and that are allowed to come here and interact with humans are doing it on a one-on-one basis. And there was a gentleman I was listening to. He's a University of Miami scientist. He has a PhD in something not related to the hard sciences, but he himself was an abductee, and he did a very scientific poll over the last 5 years and asked, this was a multi-question, 100-question testing, or a questionnaire rather, asking people directly, hey, was your interaction with these aliens good? And it basically broke down to 2 categories. In the 70% of the interactions were benevolent, and people wanted more interaction. So the government, in my view, at the very top is generating this fear porn. This is why you have a top-down triangle control grid here. Unfortunately, this is one. If you look at Max Spears, who was killed last year, he talks about this in the Bases YouTube. I think it's Bases 22 or Bases 23. Where he discusses they're up to Basis 115 now, where Max Spears, as you know, was a super soldier who was grown in the Dulce lab, who was one of 38 children, who was the prodigy of George Herbert Walker Bush. And if you look at this room full of people, they all kind of look like George Bush, including him, because he's half George Bush's DNA. And basically back in the day, in the late 70s, George Bush wanted to create a Moloch, a Luciferian controller. But instead, all these people found the light and said, hey, F you, we're not going to do that. We're going to go to the side of the light, which is beautiful. But he was killed in Poland last year because he was talking about a lot of the compartmentalized programs he was in at the Dulce base. But very specifically, my point is, in these interviews, Bases 22, 23, I saw this years ago, he talks about how the Draco reptilians specifically, and, what's his name over from England says the same thing, they're interdimensional in the 3rd and 4th dimensional realm. They've been limited by God, if you will, or source, not to go into the higher realms, God bless. So that's why we're stuck in this 3rd dimensional realm, if you will, and they can interdimensionally do 2 things. They can jump into a body and control someone, or they can create a hologram of a human, I've read, for up to 48 hours, depending on their energy. It's an energy-driven thing that they can do internally. And supposedly, according to Max Spears, we have about 300 of them here above the 66 families that control half of the wealth on the planet out of 7.35 billion people. So you have your 66 families, which control half of our wealth. And above them, in certain realms like the Queen of England, the Pope, these are either directly Draco reptilians, in my view, posing as humans, or they've been interdimensionally infected, and they have a host in their body, a parasitical host, which is controlling them. And interestingly, from what I've seen, and you can see this because you can catch them in certain 28 frame per second movies or film, if you will, that's rolling. And this is how you can see that they're interdimensionally in a body. They like to host in bodies of actors and actresses too. So we're talking about a race again that's very advanced, that is basically the pollution in this multiverse within our universe. But I don't think we really have a choice. Unfortunately, they control this planet, and as Max Spears says, there are about 300 of them plus here that are at the very top of the pyramid controlling this particular planet.
All right, Wolfgang, hold it right there. Let's take this break. First name and where you're calling from, please.
How you doing? This is Nick from New York.
Hi, Nick. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, how you doing? I mean, I agree. I've been doing a lot of research and all these things, and the Earth is changing. You have the earthquakes and mass animal deaths and all these things that are taking place. So you know something's coming in, something's happening. What is your guess? I mean, what do you guys think about the biblical part of it? I'm a Christian, and I believe in these entities, but I don't believe that they're extraterrestrials. I believe they're demonic, and they're demons, and they're fallen angels. And that's what that's what Christians basically believe. I don't know what you guys think of that.
All right, Wolfgang, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you, sir, but I take a bit of an issue because I think that, if I may, I would recommend reading, there's 3 books that are put out by Michael Sala. He's a gentleman from New South Wales, Australia. He was fired from his job as a college professor, PhD in, I think, international relations or something, where he was writing books specifically on this subject matter, akin to what you've heard, I'm sure, with David Icke, who's been talking about this forever. But I can tell you personally, 110% that from a bird colonel, 1 step below 1-star general, and a lieutenant colonel, these were 2 gentlemen I worked with, both Air Force Academy graduates. These were very vetted, real people that I worked with flying this aircraft back in the late 90s. And they're not BSing me. What they're telling me is 100% real, that we are working with these beings. And, you know, the multiverse that we live in is full of life. In my view, I find it interesting how all of these things are playing out really, and I would agree with you, in the same direction that the Bible is reading, both the New Testament and the Old Testament. But also, please, kindly, go look at the Sanskrit writings if you have a chance. 1/3. The first third of the Sanskrit writings is how to build a UFO. And supposedly that predates 22,000 years. And if we really go back, I believe in God. I had a near-death experience in a hospital in 2008, but that's another story for another day. But my point is that, you know, I believe, fortunately or unfortunately, that we have we're not. I'll put it this way: we're not the highest people on the food chain, if you will. Okay, we're a little bit lower on the food chain, unfortunately, with our clip DNA, and I think that there are definitely, in the multidimensional reality that we live in, other beings which are both benevolent and malevolent, and we happen to be in a section of the solar system, according again to William Tompkins, 92-year-old guy who wrote a book, Selected by Aliens, who has some great data going back to the 1890s, talking about these same creatures working early on with the Nazis and during the Weimar Republic. And my point is that, you know, it's real. There's so much evidence. You know, if I may, I would recommend you look at this. It's probably been pulled down by YouTube, but if you look at, it's a little bit gory, but if you look at the 1988 footage of the Ramstein Air Force Base air show crash that took place in the summer of 1988. You had about, I don't know, I think it was about 3,000 people attending this air show in the summertime in 1988. And specifically, you had the Italian aerobatic team doing a low pass head-on. One airplane clips the other aircraft's wing. The number 1 airplane does a nosedive, explodes, guy's killed. The other airplane cartwheels into the crowd and smokes instantly about 125 people that are instantly caught on fire and die. And another periphery of that, about 200 people are severely injured. But remember, in 1988, you had VHS, you had 8mm, 24 frames per second technology. You didn't have the digital technology that you have today that can manipulate, just like Britney Spears' voice. You can take a mediocre, as an analogy, you can take somebody who's a mediocre, oh, you're a good-looking female, hey, we're going to make you a rock star. We don't care about your voice. We'll fix that in the computer. Well, back in the day, that wasn't the case. And what you see in YouTube videos are these entities that look like reptiloid entities caught on tape, not from one perspective, but from 6 or 7 different separate cameras with that technology, jumping interdimensionally into the bodies of these dying people, sucking off the life force of them, because this is why they're on this planet. This is why we have fake endless war, because they propagate this, because they live on the dark side. And I agree with you, they are the fallen angels, but they're no angels. I think that's another way of describing them as such. I hope you agree with me, sir. This is just my point.
Well, see, as a born-again Christian, and if you speak to born-again Christians, I have a supernatural experience. That's how I became a Christian. And I believe that they have the technology, and I believe that they can make the spacecraft, and I believe that they can do all of that stuff. I believe everything you say. The only thing that I cannot get past is I believe in Jesus Christ and the blood of Christ and God, and I believe that it's that God is in charge, and it's not these things from other, like the Orion Belt. That's just the way Christians believe. But I do appreciate.
No, I agree with
you.
Your view,
I agree with you. And I think you're very intelligent and smart in what you're saying. But I just, as a Christian,
I agree with you. They're here as a parasite. They're here by definition as a parasite. They're here to attempt to change the parasite, to change the Earth. And here's my best analogy that I can throw at you.
Believe we're living in the end times.
Well, look at the South Korean flag. What does it have in the middle? A very old symbol, yin and yang, darkness and light. You and I are of the light. We're on the same page with that. 100%. I believe in God. I pray multiple times a day to Source. Now, I don't believe in the organized religious aspect of this, but I had a near-death experience as stated back in 2008 in a hospital, but I'm on the same page with you. But all we have, and all I'm describing here, is we have this parasite that maybe has a few more strands of DNA than us, is interdimensional between the third and fourth realm, and they're pieces of garbage. And they're here controlling certain elements of the Black Ops military, and that's all I'm really saying. And it's very unfortunate because all of us are
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're working with
they know it, of course.
Down. Sure.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. The government is not our friend. NASA is never a straight answer. We know this.
That's right.
And like you said before, with the chemtrails, people don't want to believe. Most of the people I talk to, they laugh it off. They chuckle at me. They think I am,
Cognitive dissonance, Stockholm syndrome, enormously biased, all those words.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
You can't even get past looking in the sky and saying, look. If you can't even get past that, how do you even go to Planet X? How do you even get to that part? You can't even go there.
That's right.
Of course. Sir, you're a blessing. God bless you. I go to Starbucks quite often. I do a lot of research in there, free Wi-Fi. And believe you me, I'm surrounded by sheeple. 98% of the people in the blue pill matrix. I've taken the red pill. But remember, what did Morpheus say in the 1998 movie to Keanu Reeves? He said, Keanu, or whatever his name was, people will fight to stay in the matrix.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what and how prophetic is that? That's exactly what we're facing today. You and I are having this conversation, God bless. But again, this is 1 out of 100 people. That's the unfortunate reality.
That's it.
I agree. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Listen, thank you so much for the call. I do appreciate it. Now we've got another caller. I told him I'd bring him in because sometimes when he calls in, we have issues. Hopefully that's not the case. But let's see. Let's try to bring him in. Add the group call. All right, here we go. So we should be bringing in Peter Kling here. Let's see. All right. We're ringing. There he is. Peter, welcome aboard. See, the radio show that calls you, you don't have to call us.
I gotta love it. I'm just enjoying the show. Wolfgang, you are up to snuff on your stuff. At least.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
that. I'll tell you, this last call was a great segue. Wolfgang, there's a book you have to read. It's a fantastic book, Letters to Earth. The Future is Yours. It explains everything that where we came from, what we're doing here, and what our future is, where we're actually headed to. And I happen to know the author personally. Now, here's the interesting thing. The author literally grew up with the Bible in one hand and a test tube in the other, and put them both together about 1980, and figured out that Genesis 2 chapter 2, verses 21 through 23, is actually a record of genetic engineering. Now, that changes
I agree.
the whole Bible, doesn't it?
Well, you know,
now
if
you
I
gotta look
may,
at the whole thing differently.
go ahead. Yes.
What's that?
Look at what the LDSers say. Look at what the Mormons believe. Intelligent design. Isn't that interesting how that bubbled up in the last decade? Continue, I'm sorry.
Yeah, now here's the interesting thing. The science and technology needed to understand what is written in the scriptures without the aid of religion, because that's just doctrine and dogma. Forget about religion. But once we apply to science, the science that we need, that science hasn't been developed until 1955. It's not been developed until essentially over the past 60 years. And we've needed all those things in order to comprehend that, as you talk about, it's a multiverse. Exactly. And you can't create nor destroy energy, so we can go back to the source of all energy. You had a near-death experience. I laughed when you said that, because I wish everybody had a near-death experience. It would change their perspective on life.
Of course, it completely changed my perspective. I'll briefly tell you what happened. I digress, but I was going in for elective liposuction surgery at the time in another country that I have a green card in, Brazil, because it was half the cost. And did the Brazilian doctor mess up? I don't think so, because my mother had passed away 6 months previous, and I would tell her continuously. Now, again, I wasn't born into a organized religion mindset, but I would say, Mom, you're going to go to the light. You're going to go to a higher realm. This is where you want to be. Don't come back into this meat puppet body and come back to this place. Go to a higher dimensional realm. And I would say this to my mother. God bless her soul. Fast forward, I'm on the table. I'm under, and this is an hour-and-a-half procedure. All of a sudden, I'm in a sort of holographic, if you will. It was very holographic reality, almost like a cartoon. But I'm completely conscious. It's not dream state. I'm talking to you, all y'alls, as they say in South Carolina, to all y'alls as we're talking right now. And the second thing is there was no sense of time. That was very interesting. It could have been 3 minutes. It could have been 3 hours. I think it was about 5 minutes. Then the most amazing thing happened. Off about, I would say about 15, 20 feet away is this Pez dispenser-looking light entity. It was very tall. It had a kind of a morphed face with kind of dark hair. It turns towards me. It hits my heart chakra, and I have literally, this is no BS, a love feeling blasting out of my heart chakra through my head. I'm like, wow, whoa, this is amazing. And then I said to myself, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be in a medical procedure. I must be dead. Boom. The nanosecond I said that, my eyes open in my hospital bed, and I'm like, oh my God, what just happened? The amazing thing was that feeling of love was still coming out of my head for approximately 10 minutes until it slowly faded away. Now, one more data point. It gets better. 2 years later, fast forward, I'm on YouTube, as I've been on since YouTube's inception in 2003 again. I'm looking at just random videos. I had a bricks and mortar business at that time, killing some time, looking at some videos. I came across a 16-second video, Apparition at French Disneyland. I'm like, oh, what's this? We'll check this out. CCTV, 1080p camera on the second level of a main street. Here's a Chinese woman walking down the street, dink, 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 with her stuff, little 4 or 5 foot tall woman, and she's walking by a light pole. And within 8 seconds of that 16-second video, here appears the identical light entity, only this one had blonde hair, not brown hair, identical to what I saw in that realm 2 years previous, as if it were confirmation from God saying, hey, Tom, here's a video, check it out. And I remember just, my mouth dropped. I'm like, oh, my God, that's exactly what I saw in that light realm that I was in, only it had brown hair, and that blonde hair was identical. So I believe now that everything happens for a reason, of course. There is no luck. And I was shown this as well. And there you go. So there's my story.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. I don't know how much research you've done on NDEs, but nobody's got the same one. But regardless,
no.
I'd like to give the caller, a previous caller, an answer on his question based on we'll say a Christian perspective. The Bible explains that we're essentially in the middle of a war, but it goes into greater detail. It's an interdimensional war. We're in a decision period. What we have happen, or what we call the reptilians, and this is brought out right in Genesis where it talks about the serpent. You've got this alien life form or race that was more than likely the genetic engineers of not just planet Earth, but lots of planets across the galaxy.
Of course. Of course. The official number, if I may interject, is 83 million years. 83 million years ahead of us.
Oh, yeah. It may go even beyond that, because we're talking about life forms that live in a dimension which calculate time a lot differently than we do here on Earth.
Yes.
But essentially, the challenge was put forth, and Earth is being data tested. This is also brought out by the scriptures. Now, you brought out a very interesting thing, and I don't necessarily agree with the 12-strand DNA, but I do agree with what you said about the telomeres being snipped, or that there's a slice mark where the telomeres are.
Yes, I was told this by a medical doctor who saw this in an electron microscope back in 2001. He told me this in 2005. He also said to me, because he did some backdoor study on this, that we get approximately 61 to 65 cycles of the telomeres and before you die. But in the Anunnaki and the higher life forms, where they genetically, there's something that looks like an infinity sign built into the telomere. Now
what if you took the telomeres off and connected the ends of the DNA together? It would look like an infinity sign, and when it replicated, it would replicate perfectly, and you wouldn't have the telomeres. Now, here's the question: could the telomeres have been a virus that was in the fruit that was forbidden in the Garden of Eden? Because once
I think that Enki and Anu came here and did that. I think that we had the Anunnaki, who I agree with John Teeter too, who are masters. And what do the Anunnaki do now? They live to be about 4,000 years before their meat puppet body wears out, and they create a clone of their body, an identical clone genetically, and then they can transform their spirit soul into that new body. So effectively, they never die and they don't get their brain swiped.
Well, now, here's a good segue into the next section, because when we first prior to Noah's flood, we had the Watchers, which came down to Earth, fathered the Nephilim, and according to the Book of Enoch, the souls or the conscious energy of those Nephilim are still here on Earth. Those are the demonic forces, by the best that I can tell.
Yes.
Post-flood, you've got the great-grandson of Noah, Nimrod, and there's only a little mention of him in the scriptures, barely a blurb. But we've got the historic account of what he did, and that's where the Anunnaki come in, is right in the Sumerian Empire. Now, this is the start of religion, not the start of technology, because technology goes prior to the flood, and that's recorded in the Bible. If you read, it's in one of the first chapters of Genesis, where it talks about the person who's given knowledge on how to do metalworking in iron. Pre-flood, metalworking in iron. That blows the whole Bronze Age theory, or that technology.
Well, what about, if I may, sir? What about these Sanskrit writings, which have been carbon dated approximately 22,000 years from northern India, and the first third of that, I've seen it myself on the internet, of course, where the first third of the Sanskrit writings carved into stone is again a template on how to build an anti-gravity UFO. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have no argument with that, because here's the thing. Why? But let's ask a question. Why do we have this beta test going on? Why was the challenge put out there? Because when we go into Genesis, God says, "Let us create man in our image." And we have a documented lineage that we could track year on year and figure out just how many years ago that was. It's about 6,040 years now to the creation of Adam. Now, wait a minute. We know by the fossil record, and I'll take the time lapse that we're given about let's see, 5 billion years maybe that Earth has been around, 4 billion years. Life can go back to the extremophiles that were here 3 billion years ago, but our biggest signs are cyanobacteria, which still exist. So that was the first life on Earth. For what? All this time, up until all of a sudden we get the kickstart, and all this genetic information just lands on the planet, and there's during after I forget the time period that it started, but when life all of a sudden explodes on Earth, there was more different life forms during that time period than has ever been here since.
Well, if I may, I would want to interject this real quick salient point that I believe, and I'm coming from, I think, less of a religious perspective and more of a technical perspective based upon past tense relationships of people that I knew, which got me started on all this, who worked in compartmentalized ops, if you will, and who had interaction with these entities, which got me on my quest to do this research. So my point simply is that I kind of perceive this, fortunately or unfortunately, as kind of a dumping planet. I don't think that we're the brightest stars in the box, unfortunately.
And this is why you have
anymore.
Not anymore.
Well, yeah, but my point is this:
with our DNA being taken out.
If you look at point is this: if you look at a cheetah is a clone. You can take any of the organs out of a cheetah and put it into another cheetah, and there's been DNA tests on this, meaning that cheetah was brought here most likely from another planet and put here. I also believe the same is true with the whales and the dolphins, for example. I think that they're very advanced beings.
Why
dolphins
not
have a brain.
DNA? It chips a whole lot easier. And you see that's when you go back to Genesis, the second chapter. There's the description of an operation being performed, a tissue sample being removed, and a woman being cloned out of this tissue sample, and the man knows
there you go.
That's bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. So we've got the record of genetic engineering. Now the question is, what happened before? We don't know. That's one of the problems with the Bible. It's a need-to-know book. We know that there's a history that went before that, but we don't know. We don't know anything about Atlantis. We don't know anything about Lemuria. They're just mythological places. But now let's.
Well, if I may say this,
hold on. What's different? Because this is important to where we're going to go. What's different between Cro-Magnon and modern human? The soul of God. The human vessel. You were dead. Your life force, and your consciousness were no longer in your body, and yet you were put back into that body. And we know that these advanced life forms can cohabitate in the same body as a human. And you brought out the Deluge itself. So we are captive during this beta test. And now here's where I'm going to go with the Christian end of this. This Nibiru event, which is it's got 6 prophecies within the scriptures. The best one is in Revelation. This Nibiru event, which is happening, or which is going to happen, and we already feel the effects. Earth started feeling the effects in 1998, but now it's becoming severe. This is the precursor to the coming of Christ, or the coming of the King of Kings and armies of the heavens, as it states. Now, when we go to Revelation, as you brought out earlier, there's a confinement that's going on. When we go to Revelation, the 12th chapter, it says war breaks out in heaven, and the great dragon and his angels battle against Michael and his angels, and the dragon does not prevail, and so down to the earth it was cast. Out of the other 7-dimensional realms into the physical 3 dimensions, which are actually dimensions 8, 9, and 10.
Peter, not trying to be rude, but we got to speed up just a little bit because I got a lot of questions that are coming.
So this is why this is all culminating together, and we've got the Anunnaki return timed to the Nibiru system, which is also timed to the judgment or the return of Christ and the armies of the heavens, to reset the clock and put us back on the prime directive, which was issued to Eden, or in Eden, and that's where we get our DNA repaired. So we do have a fantastic future. We might have a lot of alien intervention between now and then, though. Anyway, I'm enjoying your information, Wolfgang. I really do. Do read Letters to Earth. You'll find it most informative. I'll have another one coming out. I had alien contact when I was 18 years old. I should have been dead 16 times, was once, and got sent back. So you can imagine I've had a very interesting life.
All right. Well, Peter, thank you so
information.
much. I appreciate having you on here. I hate to have to rush you off, but I do want to get to other people's questions or they're going to get mad at me. Let's see. We've got, okay, that one's got to go. All right. Does he believe Anunnaki can exist on a planet that has no visible light for 3,600 years? And we could give like the quickest answers, I guess, for these, because I got probably about 7 questions here that I want to try
I would
to
sum
get
it
to.
up in one word. These entities, again, are approximately 2.8 to 3.3 million years ahead of us on the timeline. This is the information that I was able to get from military sources 18 years ago. Specifically, based on this, they're interstellar. And you know, we have interstellar capacity that we've been given dating back to 1919 with the Germans. And I challenge everybody, go look at the video. Another video hit here. Is it ARV? Yes, ARV, Alpha Romeo Victor. This is Alien Reproduction Vehicle. It's an hour-long video. ARV, Alien Reproduction Video. It's a fantastic video. Unfortunately, the producer-director of that video, who produced that in 2001, was poisoned and killed because he met with many Lockheed Martin compartmentalized engineers who gave him information on various, real quickly, patents discussing interdimensional travel and superluminal travel, which is all in that 1 hour video. ARV, go look it up on YouTube. There you go.
All right. And next question here. I'm going to try to get to them all, folks. I'm not promising anything. Let's see. Does your guest believe that Planet X will actually collide with Earth, or is that just a fear campaign?
No, I believe this, and this is my personal opinion, and shamelessly, I'll give myself a plug. I hope that, Michael, I'd like to come back once a month and give you updates, if I may.
I would like that, actually.
Great. I was going to say this real quickly, that I personally believe that this entire exoplanet, 12-planet system, including its 6 moons, is intelligently controlled, quote unquote. This is why it is slowed down, and I think it's going to be hanging around. I came up with basically 2 scenarios: a catastrophic scenario and one that's not so catastrophic. And personally, I think that these entities have a vested interest in us, as your previous caller discussed, and that's why I don't think they're going to smoke and kill 7.4 billion souls, all with a 2-mile-high pole shift tidal wave. I don't think it's going to happen. That's my answer.
All right. And Pal asks, Michael, how long is the guest saying the orbital period of the brown dwarf star is?
Well, it is 3,600 years, according to Zachariah Stitchin. There's another gentleman who was killed in, he was the NASA scientist. I'm going to throw his name out here. Let me find it real quick. Robert Harrington. He was killed, I think, in 2003. He was the first person in 1992 who was a insider NASA scientist, who very kind of passive, nice guy, a physicist with training, but also an astronomer. And he was the one who, following the IRAS infrared satellite launch back in 1982, he looked at the data, made a couple of videos. You can find him, Robert Harrington, on YouTube, and he really talks about, yes, there is definitely a 12th planet, as they called it back then, on an elliptical orbit, on a periodic 3,600 year. And in fact, he and I think in the video I saw him in, the last video I saw him, he's got a couple of videos, he was talking directly with Zachariah Stitchin, and they were kind of on the same page. And this was circa 2003, I think, a year before he got killed.
All right. And MDS asks, Mike, does Wolfgang have an approximate time for the poop to hit the fan?
Well, I think it's already hitting us. I think we're like a bunch of frogs being boiled in water. I think that's what's really going on here. I mean, people are waking up, but I say again, go to Jeff space P and look at this 3-phase sun filter in geosynchronous orbit 22,400 miles above the other. There's two of them being operated from the ISS space station. Let me throw another factoid. If you all recall, you can look this up, you can Google this. There was the only French female astronaut last year who blew a gasket in Paris, was screaming in her nightgown, running out of her house. She was an ISS astronaut. I did some research on her for about 6 months. She was up in the ISS back in 2013. And last year in 2016, early 2016, she runs out of her house. The world must know. We must tell them. And, you know, what must we know? What do we need to be told? And you know what they did conveniently? Oh, they sedated her and she fell into a coma. Oh, can you figure it out? And she's, poor woman's still in a coma today. So there you go.
All right. Let's see here. Jim asks, Michael, ask why men were first when we are born from women. Go figure. I think that would have been probably more of a question for Peter, but because that's kind of when it came in. But you want to comment on that?
I can only say, you know, I'm going to give him another YouTube channel if you want to laugh. This is a good one. It's called, let me find it. Bear with me.
Okay.
It's called Mr. E. Mike Romeo Echo 3000. And I'll answer that question, but it's all about trannies who are now, you know, guys posing as women in Hollywood.
Oh, good Lord.
You know, and we can refer back to Jamie Lee Curtis. Is it Jamie or is it Lee? She was born a hermaphrodite, but then she became Jamie Lee Curtis.
Well, Madonna's kind of manly too. I don't know.
Well, you know, I've always believed, and people, anyway, you know, if you look at Mr. E3000, it's kind of funny. He also plays the guitar. He's a pretty good guitar player, and he sings along, and he just breaks it down. He says, oh, look at the fingers. And remember, every man has a ring finger longer than a female. Every female has a pointer finger longer than a man. So when you look at Michael Jamal Robinson, a.k.a. Michelle Fake Obama, again, who played linebacker at the University of Oregon in 1988, okay, he has a ring finger longer than his pointer finger. This is why when the women are mad at you, they can point their long-ass finger at you. You better go out and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, that's a fact. And that's why, but the guy has had so many, what is it? He's getting off of Air Force One, and he has a fashion faux pas where the package shows, and he wears a cup. He wears a wiener cup and, to cover up his private parts. And, you know, it's straight up a guy. Look at the shoulders on the guy.
Oh, I know.
He's like a big.
I know.
I mean, come on. And then you had Joan Rivers, who was killed, who serendipitously said, oh, well, everybody knows that he's a man, don't you know?
Oh, yeah.
Bada bing, bada boom. A week later, she's dead.
That's right. And watch out for Beyonce, too. That's kind of manly, too. All right. So one more question here, and then I want to give you the floor to get on anything that you'd like. We got, what is the difference? Can you please explain the difference between the Anunnaki and the Nephilim?
From the research I've done, and I'm not a deep Zachariah Stitchin guy, nor am I a deep, what's his name, Mr. Reptilian guy from David Icke.
Yeah, David Icke.
I'm just, again, basing this on past tense information that I was told from vetted sources, and I've kind of done my own data point research regarding this. But from what I understand, the Anunnaki and the Nephilim are one and the same. I digress back. I believe strongly the work of Michael Tellinger and Alfred Lambermont Weber, where they both state they went as a group a couple years back, I believe it was in 2012, where they visited this North African site where they were mining gold to put in their upper atmosphere, 3,000 plus years ago. And, you know, and again, let's look again at what John Titor II says. He says that these people, quote unquote, are master geneticists. And when you see these chimera beings where you have, you know, an eagle head with a human body, this is the real deal. This is what I believe we are. If you look at Stanford Healthcare and you look at their website, you will see a sword with a snake, only one snake, winding down the sword as if it's stating, hey, by the way, half of your DNA is from the Anunnaki or the Nephilim. I think it's one and the same.
All right, and let me give you the floor, Wolfgang, to get out anything that you'd like, and I'll email you this weekend, and we could plan on doing this and having you back each month for updates. I mean, people want to know, so I mean, it seems like
I would love it. I would love it.
All right,
you got those pictures I sent to you of the sun, right? Weren't those mind blowing?
Yeah, I do. Well, actually, Today you sent pictures? I might have missed them.
No.
Oh,
this is where you have these higher dimensional realm beings.
Oh, yes. I've got those.
Yeah. We could talk about that on a whole show. That's about the moon, sun, soul recycling process that goes on, tied into the magnetosphere of this planet. Not only does it capture loose, but it captures our soul supposedly, sends us to the moon as in a holding area. There's been many people that use these guitar boxes with reverb, and they talk to disembarked souls. And there's been many clips where people say, "Hey, where are you?" "Oh, I'm on the moon." "Oh, you're on the moon, huh?" and it's pretty amazing.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, anything you want to get out there and plug, by all means, go ahead. I got to tell you, the time has flown. And, I mean, we could probably do another 2 hours here with the questions that are coming in, but we're out of time. But I thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir, for allowing me on your show, and definitely I will take you up on your offer. Send me an email. I would definitely like to come back. I will do my due diligence and prepare for the next show so we can talk about not only updates but other peripheral information regarding this. My real focus is the off-planet entities that are mostly benevolent, some that are benevolent that are interacting with us now in the present day, and equally important what's going on with the Nibiru system now in the present day. So what I will do, if I may, is I'm going to do a recap, and if everybody can kindly grab a pen or a pencil, I'm going to give everyone a whole bunch of YouTube channels to go look at, because at the end of all this, what I really want simply is I want everyone out there, God bless, to be informed. You know, it's hard for me. I can't have this conversation but with maybe 1 in 1,000 people. And I say, God bless, Michael. Thank you, because, you know, this is a great platform to get the word out, and we need to wake people up. You need to know that your taxpayer money, almost 40 cents out of every federal taxpayer dollar, is going into off-planet space programs, and it has been so for the past 50-plus years. 40 cents almost of every federal dollar that you're paying in taxes is going into this garbage. And this is, you know, it's corrupt, because what did Randy Kramer say real quickly in 1998 when he was getting his gold watch and leaving after 20 years, 17 years on Mars in the U.S. space program? Who gave him his vetted out? It was Donald Rumsfeld. Does that speak volumes? Hello. I mean, come on. It's a corrupt bunch that are running this. So my point is this. Let's get to these real quickly to these YouTube channels. First, there's Steve Olson. Everyone knows who Steve Olson is. God bless. I hope the guy isn't killed. They've taken down his website, and I don't know a lot of people are concerned about him. And, you know, when you're over the target, like in Nazi Germany, and getting the flak, well, there it is. You know you're over the target. So you have Steve Olson. You have the Higher Truth channel. This is a gentleman who puts out great vetted data, all from NASA, all from Caltech, JPL, ESA, European Space Agency. If you really want to get into the minutiae of the helium-3 and helium-4 affecting us, which is a direct correlation from a brown dwarf star, continuing, so you've got Steve Olson, Higher Truth channel, Nibiru News, and Nibiru Planet X 2016. Same guy, very nice guy, really gets the data out, the freshest data on what's going on. Really good pictures from Bondi Beach, mostly from the southern hemisphere. This is where the best photos are coming out of being caught, where they're not doing quite as much geoengineering down there in the New South Wales area on the east coast of Australia. Continuing, who else is there? I'm thinking off the top of my brain here. We've got Nibiru News, we've got Steve Olson, we have R. Wayne Steiger. R. Wayne Steiger. Excellent guy, kind of a Midwestern gentleman. Really breaks down the PhD theoretical physicist white papers. And again, if you want to get into the minutiae of what's going on, really breaks it down well. Okay, there's David Dobbs. David Dobbs is an English gentleman, We've got a planetoid ball. I think it's a warning system. I think it's a drone that the Anunnaki are putting out to warn us, and to awaken the sheeple. And it's just hitting the top of the troposphere, which is about 85,000 feet approximately. This is the terminus area where you get into interstellar space, where the temperature drops to 255 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, above that altitude. And below 85,000 feet, you get into our stratosphere and then the troposphere to ground level. My point is that people are saying, oh, that's Nibiru. No, it ain't, because it's generating some contrails, and if you zoom in on it, it's a ball. It's sort of a spherical metallic ball. I believe it's a drone being operated by the Anunnaki to warn the sheeple and hopefully more people on the planet. And it's being seen all over the world. So those are probably the best channels I can recommend. And these are the channels that I've vetted really in the last couple of years to look at to get the best data.
All right. Well, Wolfgang, thank you so much for being here tonight. Have a great weekend, and I will be in touch, and we'll get you back on. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you again, Michael, and I look forward to bringing you more information next month. I will definitely continue with the research. And, the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, and Michael, this exoplanet system, bottom line, is in our inner solar system, just below the ecliptic plane right now, period. It's there. It's already here. It's probably about, if I were to put a number on it, we're probably talking 250 to 300 million miles from us right now, about 3 distances of the sun.
All right.
That's how far it is.
All right. Well, Wolfgang, we've got to run. We've got another show coming on here after me tonight,
Yes, sir.
and they'll end up booting me off. So